They say the town of Millridge isn't even on most maps anymore. I learned that the hard way, standing outside the bus station in the gray morning drizzle, holding a duffel bag that felt heavier than my regrets. The air smelled of rust, damp earth, and something faintly metallic, like old pennies soaked in rainwater. The bus that dropped me off didn't even wait for me to take a good look around before it disappeared down the cracked road, tires hissing like it was fleeing something. I was alone. I hadn't seen another soul in over an hour. The street signs were rusted, some hanging by a single bolt. Storefronts were boarded up. The only sound was the soft groan of wind pushing against empty buildings, whispering through broken windows like it had secrets to tell. I wasn't here by choice. When you've burned enough bridges, even the strangest offers start to look like salvation. The job ad had been vague. Night watchman needed. Millridge Rail Museum. Quiet work. Must be reliable. No experience required. The kind of ad that smells like either a setup or a dead end. But I took it. My name's Edward Langley. 32. Former freelance writer. Occasional bartender. Full-time disappointment. After my girlfriend left, and my last publisher told me my work lacked market appeal, I figured I could use a place where no one knew my name. Somewhere the silence could drown out the noise in my head. I followed a narrow gravel path from the station. It led downhill through leafless trees, past a collapsed fence, until I saw it. The Millridge Rail Museum. A forgotten brick building, squatting at the edge of the woods like it didn't want to be seen. The paint on the sign had peeled away until only faint letters remained. A rusted steam engine sat out front, wheels frozen mid-turn, vines crawling over its frame like nature was slowly trying to erase it. One of the train cars was split open, revealing rows of worn red seats and shattered windows. I stood there listening. There was no sound of trains, no footsteps, just the creak of the wind tugging at an old metal flagpole. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. Dim lights buzzed overhead. The place smelled like wood polish, mildew, and old stories. To the left was a room marked Exhibit Hall. To the right, office and archives. Ahead, a hallway led deeper into the museum's belly. The air was cold, unnaturally so. That's when I saw him. An old man stood by the reception desk. Thin, stooped, with a face like dried paper and eyes too sharp for someone's age. His clothes were neat, but old-fashioned. He didn't smile. "You're early," he said. His voice was dry, like it hadn't been used in a long time. "Sorry. Bus dropped me off ahead of schedule." "There's no schedule," he said. "Not really." I didn't know what to say to that. He handed me a ring of keys, his fingers cold as they brushed mine. "You'll find everything you need in the office," he added, turning away. "Don't wander after midnight." Before I could ask what that meant, he shuffled down the hall and vanished around the corner. I didn't see him again. I found the security office near the back. Small room. Desk. Chair. Old CCTV monitors stacked in a metal rack, most with static flickering across the screens. A cracked mug sat by the keyboard, still stained with old coffee. And there it was, taped to the wall beside the light switch. A yellowing sheet of paper, its edges curled and stained like it had been there forever. The title was handwritten in bold red ink. Rules for the Night Shift Watchman. I read them twice. Do not stare into engine 13's windows after 12:11 a.m. If you hear the 1:03 a.m. whistle, cover your ears. Do not respond. The wax figures in the conductor's hall may move. Do not acknowledge them. Between 2 o'clock and 2:07 a.m., someone may knock on the office door. Do not open it. Do not sleep in the museum. Ever. There were more. At least a dozen. Some scratched out. Some rewritten. Some with ink smeared like someone had been shaking while writing. I chuckled nervously. Some old prank from the last guy, I thought. Maybe a twisted sense of humor. Still, something about it chilled me. Like the rules weren't jokes at all, but warnings. That night, I sat alone in the office chair, listening to the wind moan against the windows, watching the static flicker on the screens, waiting for nothing. And yet, in the quiet, I had this feeling like I wasn't alone. Like the museum had already begun to notice me. Like I had stepped into a place where the past wasn't finished yet. And maybe, just maybe, it was waiting for me to break a rule. The museum smelled like dust and rust. Not just any kind of dust. This was the thick old kind, the kind that carries whispers in it. It clung to the windows, lined the wooden floorboards, and floated in the air like it had nowhere better to be. I walked through the long hallway near the front entrance, my boots echoing softly behind me. The place was quiet. Too quiet. It was only my second night on the job, and I already felt like I'd stepped into a forgotten world. Rows of old mannequins stood frozen in time. Station masters, porters, passengers with blank stares and faded clothes. Their glassy eyes always seemed to be just a little off-center, like they were pretending not to look at you. I made my way to the small security room near the back of the museum. That's where I found the list. It was taped to the inside of a rusted filing cabinet, hanging there like it had been waiting for someone to take it seriously. Rules for the night shift. Do not enter engine 13 after 12:11 a.m. If you hear a whistle at 1:03 a.m., cover your ears. Do not respond. Avoid eye contact with the wax conductor near the ticket booth. Between 2 o'clock and 2:07 a.m., someone may knock. Do not answer. Do not use your name inside the freight tunnel. If you see a girl in white on the second floor, leave that floor immediately. If your reflection smiles, leave the museum and do not return that night. At first, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Some poor soul must have been really bored on the job and decided to prank the next guy. Good one. I even looked around for a hidden camera, wondering if someone was watching me react to the creepy list. But the way it was written, it didn't feel like a joke. The letters were jagged, almost rushed. Like the person writing it didn't have much time, or didn't want to be caught. I took the paper off the cabinet and laid it on the desk. My fingers hesitated on the corners. I didn't want to crumple it or toss it. Something about it felt sacred. No, not sacred. Final. Like a warning carved into stone just before the end. I leaned back in the creaky chair and stared at the security monitors. 6 fuzzy black and white screens showed different parts of the museum. Everything looked still, until I noticed something. The wax conductor near the ticket booth. I could have sworn he had been facing straight ahead. Now, on the monitor, his body was slightly turned. Not by much. Just a few degrees off-center. Enough to make my stomach twist. I blinked hard. Looked again. Still turned. I rubbed my face, told myself I was being stupid. That statue probably just looks different from another angle. It's just lighting. A trick of the shadows. Museums are full of those. Still, I found myself glancing back at the paper. Rule number 3. Avoid eye contact. I scoffed. All right, buddy, I muttered. Let's not go crazy on night 2. But even as I said it, I reached over and turned the camera feed off of the ticket booth. Just in case. The rest of the night crept by, slow as molasses. I walked the halls every hour, flashlight in hand, boots thudding softly. The place was dead silent except for the occasional creak of old wood or a faint groan from the ceiling pipes. But at 1:03 a.m., something strange happened. I heard it. Faint. Distant. Like it came from miles away but still clear enough to make the hairs on my neck stand up. A train whistle. High and hollow, like it was calling for something lost. I froze. The paper's words screamed in my mind. Cover your ears. Do not respond. Instead, I stood there like an idiot. Listening. Letting it soak into me. It felt like it was pulling at something inside my chest, like a memory I didn't have. I didn't cover my ears. I just listened. Then it stopped. No echo. No fade. Just silence again. And in that silence, I heard something else. The click of a door closing somewhere behind me. When I turned around, nothing was there. Just the long, empty hallway. And the mannequins, standing where they always were. Except one of them had moved. The wax conductor was now facing the security office. No smile. No expression. Just standing there, looking. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in the security room, eyes on the list, all the way until sunrise. The night started off quiet. Too quiet. After my rounds at the front exhibit, I returned to the security office with a steaming cup of instant coffee. The bitter taste made my face scrunch, but it was something warm in a place that felt more like a tomb than a museum. I glanced at the list of rules again, the edges yellow and curled like dried leaves. Rule number 2, stare back at me. Do not look directly into engine 13's windows after 12:11 a.m. I checked my watch. 12:08. My fingers drummed against the desk. My curiosity wrestled with my nerves. It's just a dusty old train, I told myself. Rules like that are made to scare new hires. Or maybe the last guard had too much time on his hands. Still, that engine had always felt wrong. Engine 13 sat at the far end of the indoor yard, tucked beneath a broken skylight that never quite let moonlight in. Even during the day, it looked like it had seen too much. Black steel, rusted edges, and a cabin window like a blind, eye staring into the dark. At 12:10, I stood up. I told myself I wasn't doing it to break the rule. I just wanted to see for myself, to prove it was all in my head. As I walked through the quiet hallway, the sound of my boots echoed too loudly. The museum groaned and creaked like it didn't want me there. When I reached engine 13, the air changed. It was colder here, heavier. The clock on the wall read 12:11. I stepped closer to the engine. The window was fogged. Dust clung to it like skin. I raised a hand and wiped the glass with my sleeve. That's when I saw them. Inside the engine's cabin were rows of people. Passengers. But something was wrong with their faces. They weren't blank, not exactly. More like stretched, smeared, like wet paint running down a wall. No eyes. No mouths. Just pale shapes wearing outdated clothes. They were still, but I could feel them watching me. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Then something moved. The conductor. He stepped into view from the shadows of the cabin. Tall, thin, and wearing an old black uniform with a red band around the sleeve. His cap was tilted low, but I could still see the gleam in his eyes. They were glowing. A faint orange, like dying embers. Not human. He lifted a hand and pointed straight at me. I tried to move, tried to run, but my legs refused. The engine door groaned. It creaked open slowly, like something inside wanted out. The hiss of steam rolled out from the cabin, though no machine was running. My vision blurred. The last thing I remember was the sound of a whistle, sharp and shrill, slicing through the silence. Then darkness. I woke up outside, near the back gate, lying on the gravel. My head throbbed, and my clothes were damp with morning dew. The sky was turning gray. My hands were black with soot. No explanation. No memory of walking there. Just the distant whistle still echoing in my ears, like it never really left. And when I got back to the security office, I saw the rules again. But rule number 2 had changed. It now read, "If you see the passengers, do not let them see you." I stared at it, heart hammering. Something had seen me last night, and I had the feeling it wasn't done watching. The next night, I came in early. Something about the engine from last night hadn't left me. Even after a hot shower and 2 stiff drinks, I could still feel the weight of those faceless passengers pressing down on me. I needed answers. Anything that could explain what I saw, what I felt. So I decided to snoop. The museum's back office was dusty and dim, filled with filing cabinets that hadn't been touched in years. The fluorescent light above me buzzed softly, flickering like it was on the edge of giving up. I opened drawer after drawer, flipping through old maintenance logs, donation receipts, visitor guest books, useless stuff. But then I found it. A battered, leather-bound journal buried at the bottom of a metal cabinet marked Staff, Archive. Its cover was cracked and dry, and when I opened it, the pages felt fragile, almost like old leaves. Inside the front cover, written in a shaky hand, "Property of J. Maynard, Night Watch, 1982 to 1985. I sat down in the corner of the office, the dusty floor creaking beneath me. My flashlight cast long shadows as I began to read. The first few entries were dull, mentions of creaky floors, faulty lights, minor break-ins. But a few pages in, things changed. March 11th, 1983, 1 a.m. Heard the whistle again tonight. But the tracks are dead. Saw someone standing in front of engine 13. When I approached, it vanished. Left behind shoe prints, burned into the metal floor. I paused, looking up at the door that led to the exhibit hall. Everything was silent. I kept reading. April 5th, 1983. The rules, they changed. I swear they weren't in that order last week. Rule number 4 was about ignoring voices. Now it says never speak to the conductor if he tips his hat. I haven't seen anyone tip anything. Not yet. My mouth went dry. That exact rule had been on the list in my office since I started. Word for word. Maynard's entries grew more desperate as the weeks passed. His handwriting slanted, his words sharper, panicked. May 30th, 1983. I saw Lamar Voss last night. Not in wax. In flesh. He was staring at the reflection in the display glass. But the reflection, it wasn't him. It was me. That hit me hard. I remember the knock on my door. The brief flash of myself staring back through the peephole. That couldn't be a coincidence. Maynard saw the same thing. I flipped to the final pages. They were smeared. Some water damage, maybe tears. The handwriting was rushed, chaotic. August 3rd, 1983. Something comes through the tunnel when the rules are broken too often. I've been careless. I forgot to cover the mirrors. It found me. It whispered time. 3:33. It said the next conductor would be chosen then. I think it means me. The very last page wasn't written. It was drawn. A detailed sketch of the museum's exhibit hall. Only the tracks didn't stop at the wall. In Maynard's drawing, they stretched further, deeper underground. And there, in the dark beyond the tunnel, was a monstrous shadow, stitched from metal and smoke, grinning with 1,000 teeth. I stared at that page for a long time. Then I noticed something scratched faintly into the bottom margin. It was almost invisible, like it had been etched with a needle. If you're reading this, you're next. The lights in the office flickered. Then I heard it, distant but clear. A low whistle. Long morning. Coming from deep inside the museum. I slammed the journal shut and stood up fast, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I didn't. I took the journal with me. Whatever Maynard faced, whatever he became, I had a feeling I was already on the same track. I first heard the whisper on my third night. It started as a hum, low and steady, like the vibration of a distant engine trapped beneath the earth. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at the grainy security monitors, when it reached me. Just a thin thread of sound, almost like someone breathing behind a thick wall. At first, I thought it was the pipes. The place is old, over 100 years of rust and dust built into its bones. But the sound didn't echo like metal. It pulsed like something alive. It was coming from the freight tunnel. That part of the museum was always sealed. A massive rusted door, bolted and chained, with a faded "Do Not Enter" sign, marked the entrance near the back of the depot. I'd walk past it on patrol every night. Never gave it much thought. But that night, it called to me. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way through the hall of mannequins. The wax figures always creeped me out. Something about their glassy eyes never sat right with me. As I passed the wax conductor, I could have sworn its head had turned a few inches since I last looked. But I didn't stop. The whisper grew clearer the closer I got. It was murmuring words now, soft and broken. "Edward, do you hear it? The schedule, the train wrong." My blood ran cold. I stopped 10 feet from the tunnel door. The chains around it were shaking. Not violently, but trembling like something was pressing against the other side, waiting. My hand hovered over the flashlight switch. I didn't want to shine it directly at the door. I didn't want to see anything I couldn't forget. The whisper kept going, now in a loop. "You're off schedule. Off schedule, ah." I backed away slowly. I remembered one of the rules, rule number 9. If the chains rattle, walk away. Do not ask who's behind the door. So I did. I turned and walked back the way I came. But I couldn't ignore it. That voice, it knew my name. It spoke like it had been waiting for me a long time. Back in the security office, I tried to calm myself. I rewound the surveillance footage, aimed at the freight tunnel. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just static. Until 2:06 a.m. For 1 second, just one, I saw myself on the screen, standing at the freight tunnel door, flashlight raised. But I hadn't been there at that time. I was in the office. Or at least, I thought I was. I leaned closer to the monitor. My double turned his head slowly toward the camera. His eyes were black. Not dark. Black. Hollow. Like tunnels of their own. Then the screen cut to static again. I didn't sleep that day. I didn't eat either. I just kept hearing it. That whisper, looping behind my ears like it had crawled inside my head. And for the first time since I took this job, I realized something. The museum isn't haunted. It's scheduled. And something inside the freight tunnel is keeping time. The clock on the office wall clicked over to 1:02 a.m. I stared at it, holding my breath without realizing. The second hand crept forward like it was dragging something behind it. 1 minute to go. Rule number 7 from the board flashed in my head like a neon sign. If you hear the 1:03 a.m. whistle, cover your ears. Do not respond. It sounded ridiculous when I first read it. Just another line on that creepy list. But that was before the tapping, the faces in the windows, and the soot-stained blackout that still made my skin crawl. I stood by the security window with the lights off, watching the yard. The train yard outside looked dead, rows of rusted tracks cutting through tall weeds, museum pieces left to rot under the moon. A few of the old engines sat like sleeping giants, their hulking shapes outlined by silver light. Then it happened. A sound low, distant, but growing fast. A whistle, but not like any train I'd ever heard. This one had a howl to it, like it was screaming. It started from far beyond the tree line, down where the tracks vanished into fog. My hands shot up to cover my ears. The sound hit me like a punch to the chest. Not just loud, wrong. It was too deep, too long. It dragged through the air, making my teeth hurt. My eyes watered, and even though I was pressing hard against my ears, I could still hear it inside my head. Then, from the fog, it appeared. A train. Black, massive, and completely intact. Not rusted or worn. It rolled forward without a sound from its wheels. No vibration. No rattle. Just that whistle, like it was warning the world it shouldn't be here. And yet, there it was. It slid along the old track in front of the museum, its headlight flickering. Cars passed behind it. Elegant, old passenger cars with frosted windows and golden trim. But what chilled me was this. Every single window was fogged up, except one. Car number 3. That window was clear, and someone was watching me. I stepped back into the shadows, heart hammering. The figure in the window didn't move. Just stood there, staring. Or maybe not staring, maybe waiting. Then I saw him. At the very end of the last car stood a tall man in a long black coat. His conductor's cap sat perfectly straight on his head. He held a glowing lantern in one hand. The other hand, it was missing. Just a void of flickering shadow. His face was pale, stretched, almost too smooth. No lips, no eyelids. Just too dim, orbs where I should have been. Lamar Voss. It had to be. As the train passed, the whistle cried out again. This time it didn't sound like metal or steam. It sounded like voices. Hundreds of them, screaming and whispering at once. My knees buckled. I dropped to the floor, clutching my head, waiting for the sound to pass. And then, silence. I looked up. The yard was empty again. The tracks bare. No lights. No sound. The air felt lighter, but not safer. I crawled to the window, just to be sure. No train. But something was different. The grass along the tracks was flattened, freshly pressed down. And in the dirt near the entrance, I saw footprints. Heavy ones, leading straight to the front door. Someone, or something, had gotten off. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut, locking it, and double-checking the windows. That night, I didn't sit. I didn't blink. I watched the door until dawn. And I never forgot the face in the window. The train that wasn't supposed to run anymore. And the conductor who never left the schedule. The phantom train had arrived, and it was running right. On time. The silence of the museum had always been unsettling, but tonight it felt different. I don't know how to describe it. Like the walls were closing in, or perhaps I was becoming more attuned to the darkness within these halls. The clock on the wall ticked slower, its rhythmic beat stretching the night into a strange, distorted eternity. I tried to focus on my tasks, checking the security footage, making sure the doors were locked, but something was off. There was a feeling in the air, something heavy and suffocating, like it was waiting for me to notice it. I walked past the wax conductor figures. Their frozen expressions were always strange, but tonight they seemed more lifelike. The dim lights cast long shadows across their faces, and the faint flicker of the overhead lamps gave them an almost human quality. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to fatigue and the unnerving atmosphere of the place. But then I saw it. I didn't believe my eyes at first. One of the conductors, the tall one with the long, dark coat and the brass pocket watch, had moved. Just slightly. His head had tilted, a fraction of an inch, as if he were looking right at me. My heart skipped, and I froze in place, staring at the figure, wondering if I had imagined it. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. When I opened them again, he was still staring at me. I shook my head. I had to be losing it. The fatigue from working these night shifts was starting to mess with my mind. I turned to walk away, thinking I needed some air, but that's when I noticed the others. They were all shifting. Slowly. Their eyes were no longer fixed in the same direction. One of the smaller figures, a young conductor with a cap, was now facing me. The glassy, hollow eyes staring into mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The wax was softening in places, the cracks and creases around their faces deepening, like they were somehow alive. I could hear my breath, too loud in the oppressive silence. I backed away, but my feet felt like they were stuck in place, as if the museum itself was holding me hostage. Something wasn't right. I turned to look at the rest of the room, and that's when I realized what I hadn't seen before. The figures weren't just moving, they were changing. Their faces, once perfectly molded and static, were now warping. I could swear that the smooth wax was melting away, revealing hollowed-out eyes and faces with no features. Just smooth skin and deep, gaping voids where there should have been mouths, noses, eyes. Their faces looked like someone had carved them out, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. They were looking at me, not just with their eyes, but with something else. Something I couldn't name. My heart raced. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise, and for the first time since I started working here, I was scared. Really scared. I took a few steps back, my pulse pounding in my ears, but the figures kept shifting. The tall conductor, the one with the pocket watch, his lips parted. A dry, hollow voice seeped from his waxen lips, as though his very being were falling apart. "You broke the rules." The word sent a chill straight through me. I stumbled back, my mind racing. How could he speak? How could any of them speak? They were just figures, frozen in time. I must have been hearing things, right? It had to be my exhaustion, my mind playing tricks on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just my mind. There was something in the air, something ancient and alive, watching, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I turned toward the door, my mind spinning with the idea of leaving this cursed place, but something caught my eye. One of the conductors had started to move toward me. His feet made no sound, his movements stiff and mechanical, but unmistakably deliberate. He was walking, his face empty, no expression at all. I stood there frozen, unable to look away as he came closer. With every step, I could hear the air growing heavier, like the walls were closing in around me. The empty face of the conductor stared straight into mine, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in the hollow eyes, something human, maybe even familiar. It was a look of recognition, or was it just a twisted reflection of myself? I snapped back to reality, adrenaline surging through my veins. I had to get out of here, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. I had to run, but I was paralyzed. The conductor's hand reached out toward me, his fingers unnaturally long, like claws made of wax and desperation. The museum seemed to breathe, and the air turned thick with the smell of melted wax and dust. The rules, those strange, cryptic rules I had ignored, were closing in on me, wrapping around my mind like a vice. Then, a voice, low, cold, and unmistakable, came from the dark corner of the room. It wasn't from any of the figures. It was from the shadows themselves. "You're late, Edward." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a warning. It was a command, a truth that felt more real than anything else I'd experienced. The shadows deepened, and before I could react, everything went black. I'd been digging for hours. Every creaky floorboard I turned over, every dusty corner I poked, only led to more whispers, silent whispers that curled around my ears like tendrils, urging me deeper into the mystery. The truth I was searching for had never been so clear, yet it had always been there, waiting. The rules, the strange happenings, the unsettling things I kept brushing off, they were all part of something bigger, something older, something far darker than I ever could have imagined. I stood in front of the small, cluttered desk in the security office, the dim light flickering as I sifted through the contents of the box Hollis had given me. A collection of relics from past guards, old hats, dusty uniforms, and journals. One journal caught my eye more than the others. It was bound in a cracked, brown leather that looked as though it had been torn from the very bones of the past. As soon as I touched it, a strange chill ran through my fingers, like the weight of forgotten things pressing against my skin. I opened it, the brittle pages cracking with age. The first entry was written in a hurried, almost frantic scrawl. "Do not listen to the sounds after midnight," it said. "Do not respond to them. Not unless you want to be part of the schedule." The words didn't make sense at first, but as I turned the pages, they began to form a pattern that mirrored everything I had experienced. The dates in the journal were eerily familiar, matching up with the days I had been working here. The same rules, the same warnings. The same unsettling feeling that had gnawed at me since day one. I read on, the ink staining my fingers as I traced the fading words. There were mentions of a man, Lamar Voss. His name kept appearing, each time more urgently. He was the conductor of a train that never should have existed, a train that had been running long before the museum opened its doors. A train that carried more than just passengers. It carried the darkness. The kind of darkness that had swallowed the town of Mill Ridge whole, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but ghosts and silence. I found the part that made everything click into place. There, in the middle of the journal, was a diagram of the museum's underground tunnels. Tunnels I hadn't dared to enter yet. The diagram was crude, but it was enough to show the true layout of the museum. Beneath the exhibits, beneath the tracks, there was something locked away, something that only Lamar knew how to control. The journal spoke of a ritual, one that had been carried out for generations, to keep the demonic presence contained beneath the earth. And the key to the ritual was obedience. The rules were never just a joke. They were part of the sacrifice. Each time a guard came, they were chosen to replace the last one, to continue the cycle of watching over the train and the evil it carried. And once you broke the rules, once you took one step off the path, you were no longer a witness. You were part of the schedule. I slammed the journal shut, my heart pounding. I couldn't breathe. Everything was starting to make sense, and it terrified me. Hollis had known. He had warned me, and yet I hadn't listened. I had been too focused on surviving the night to see what was really going on. I shoved the journal into my bag and ran out of the office. The hallways felt colder now, as if the air itself was growing thick with something old, something that had been waiting for me. I reached the main gallery, where the rusting trains stood like silent sentinels, their metal bodies gleaming under the dim light. Everything was exactly as it had been when I first arrived, but now I saw it for what it truly was, a prison, a waiting room for whatever had been sealed away beneath the museum. I walked past Engine 13, the one I had stared at for too long. The same strange figures still sat inside, their faces hidden in shadow. I could feel their eyes on me. They were waiting for me to make the next mistake. I heard a faint noise from the freight tunnel, a low, rhythmic thudding, like something was pounding against the walls. It wasn't the train. It wasn't anything I could explain with logic. I had to find out what was happening, what was beneath the tracks. I had to know if there was still a way to stop it. But the further I went, the more the air thickened. Each step felt heavier, like I was moving through something thick and viscous, something that didn't belong in the world I knew. The hallway stretched out before me, and I turned the corner to face the freight tunnel. The door was sealed tight, just like the journal said it would be. But there was something behind it. I could hear it now, scratching and scraping, like nails against stone. I couldn't turn back. I couldn't walk away now. I pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The weight of what was happening pressed down on me harder than the darkness. And then, from behind me, I heard a voice, low, rasping, familiar. "You shouldn't have opened the journal, Edward," Lamar said. "The train doesn't like to be ignored." I froze, the air catching in my throat. "I'm afraid you're part of the schedule now," he continued. "You should have listened to the rules." The sound of the train's whistle echoed through the walls, but it wasn't the whistle of any ordinary train. It was the sound of something that had been buried, something that had come back to claim its place. And I was about to be part of it. The air in the museum was thick. Every breath I took felt heavier, like the walls were pressing in from all sides. I stared at the security monitors in the dim light, the screens flickering with static. But in the static, I saw faces, familiar faces, yet not. The wax figures. They moved again. I was sure of it now. I wasn't imagining it. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 2:25 a.m. The stillness of the night seemed suffocating. The museum was silent, except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the distant hum of a malfunctioning light bulb somewhere in the depths of the building. But I wasn't alone. I knew that now. The air felt alive. I could almost hear the weight of its expectations. I took one last look at the rules on the wall, those rules I had laughed at, mocked and ignored. Each one felt like it was carved into my skin now, etched into my very bones. Do not break the rules. Do not look at Engine 13. Do not open the door between 2 a.m. and 2:07 a.m. I had broken them all, and now I could feel the consequences closing in around me. I thought about what Lamar had said, about keeping the train on time, about maintaining the schedule. He wasn't just obsessed. He was a prisoner of it. And somehow, so was I. The museum wasn't just a museum. It was a holding cell. For him, for me, for anyone foolish enough to take this job. But now I understood. Lamar wasn't the only one who had been trapped. We all were. I stood up from the desk, my legs unsteady as if the floor itself were shifting beneath me. My eyes flicked toward the door to the freight tunnel. It was always locked, always sealed. But tonight, it looked different. Tonight, it seemed to call me. I moved toward it, the key in my hand. The museum seemed to grow darker with each step I took. The sound of my boots on the hardwood was deafening in the quiet. I felt a strange tug in my chest, a pull I couldn't ignore, and I knew I had to go down there. I shoved the key into the old, rusted lock, turning it with a sharp click. The door groaned open, revealing the long, dark corridor that led into the freight tunnel. The air was cooler here, musty, carrying the scent of earth and mildew. And beneath that, something else. Something old. Something hungry. I stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with a thud that echoed down the tunnel. The darkness swallowed me whole. The tunnel stretched ahead like a mouth ready to consume me, and yet I couldn't stop moving forward. I needed answers. I needed to break the cycle. As I walked deeper into the dark, I heard it. The low, almost imperceptible hum of the train's engine. The ghost train. I could feel it vibrating in my chest. A pull I couldn't explain. It was real. Lamar was real. The tunnel opened up ahead, revealing the remnants of an old platform, rotting wood and rusted iron. And there, sitting in the shadows, was the train. It was a ghost of what it once was, half dead and decaying. Its body was cracked and pocked, the paint peeling away like it had been scarred by time itself. Yet the wheels were still, somehow, turning. Still, somehow, waiting. Lamar stood beside the train, his figure draped in shadow. But I could see his eyes. Those glowing eyes. He was waiting, watching me. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice low, rough, like the sound of gravel grinding under a wheel. It sent a shiver through me. "I don't have a choice," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "I need to stop this." "You can't," he said, stepping closer. His feet didn't touch the ground. He floated, hovering, as if he wasn't really there. "The schedule must be kept. You are part of it now. And so is this train." I clenched my fists. I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. "I can break it," I said, the words coming out of my mouth more confidently than I felt. "I don't care what happens to me. This has to end." Lamar's smile was cold, calculating. He knew something I didn't. "You think you can destroy it? Break the rules? The schedule has been in place for decades, Edward. You can't just walk away from it." "No one can." I stared at him, at his half-human, half-wax figure. His face was frozen in a twisted expression of grief and rage. But there was something more, something deeper. A shadow clung to him, like a shroud. "Why do you want this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why do you want to keep the schedule going? What is it you're protecting?" His eyes flickered for a moment, the glow dimming as though he was considering my question. "I'm not protecting it," he whispered, his voice barely audible now. "I'm trapped by it, just like you will be. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't let that happen." I pulled the journal from my jacket, the one I'd found earlier, the one with the incantation written in the last pages. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but I knew what I had to do. The ritual. I flipped to the last page. The symbols were there, drawn in frantic, desperate strokes. I took a deep breath and began to chant the words. The air around me began to vibrate, humming with power. The train's engine roared to life, the metal groaning in protest. Lamar's form began to shift, warping, his features becoming more monstrous with each passing second. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. The train's whistle blared, deafening. I kept chanting. My voice cracked and broke, but I pushed on. The ground beneath me shook, the tunnel trembling, as if something was trying to claw its way out from below. And then, the train started to move. Slowly at first, but then faster. The air grew cold, like the breath of something ancient, something angry. I knew I didn't have much time. The ritual was breaking the cycle, but it was also unsealing something else. Something worse. I shouted the last words of the incantation, and everything went silent. The train stopped. Lamar stopped. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then there was nothing. No train. No Lamar. Just the darkness of the tunnel, swallowing me whole. I didn't know if I had one, or if I had only started something worse. But I knew one thing. I had broken the cycle. And whatever came next, I was ready for it. I could hear it before I saw it. The low hum of a whistle cutting through the air, so faint I could barely make out the sound over my racing heartbeat. The moment I stepped into the tunnel, the temperature dropped. The walls, once covered in peeling posters and old paint, now felt slick with something darker, something older. The weight of it was suffocating, like the entire underground world was pressing down on me. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, to climb back into the museum and lock the door. But I couldn't. The train was coming, and Lamar was waiting. I reached the freight tunnel's sealed entrance, the rusted steel doors groaning as I pushed them open. The familiar smell of iron and decay filled my nostrils, but beneath it was something sharper, like the scent of old leather and burnt coal. I could hear the train now, faint but unmistakable, the sound of its wheels dragging along the tracks, the hiss of steam escaping somewhere in the distance. I forced myself forward, each step echoing through the damp air, every footfall sounding like a drumbeat. It didn't make sense. The tracks hadn't been touched in decades. The station was nothing but an abandoned relic. Yet, here I was, stepping into the dark heart of it all. The tunnel stretched out ahead of me, endless and winding. But in the distance, I saw it, a ghostly silhouette against the flickering light of my flashlight. The train. It was unlike any train I'd ever seen, or ever would again. The cars were decaying, half-rotted with time, but they still gleamed in the dim light, as if they'd been polished just hours ago. The engine, if you could even call it that, was monstrous. A strange mix of rusted metal and something living. It pulsed the way a heartbeat does, slow and steady, but relentless. And, standing on the rear platform, just like I'd seen in the museum, was Lamar. His face was no longer a mask of waxy stillness. His eyes burned now. They gleamed with an unnatural, fiery glow. He wore the same conductor's uniform, but now it seemed more like a shroud, hanging loosely off his thin frame, a reminder of the man he once was. He stood still, watching me approach with that sickening grin. "You're late," he said, his voice harsh like gravel grinding together. I froze in place, my heart stumbling in my chest. How could he be here? How could any of this be real? But the sound of the train, the way it seemed to pulse with life, was undeniable. The air around me crackled with a static energy that made my skin prickle. I took a shaky step forward, unable to look away from the twisted form of Lamar. He smiled wider, his teeth too sharp, too white against his sunken face. "Come along now, Edward," he said, his voice smooth but laced with something dark. "It's time to take your seat." I could feel it now, like an invisible hand pulling me toward the train. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something stronger, something deeper. My body moved on its own, taking one step after another toward the train. "No," I whispered, but my voice didn't feel like my own. It was distant, muffled, like I was trapped in a dream I couldn't wake from. Lamar raised his hand, his fingers long and twisted, pointing toward the entrance of the nearest car. "You've already made your choice. The rules were never meant for you to break, Edward." And now, the doors to the train opened on their own, an invitation to a ride I couldn't refuse. The cold air from inside hit me, thick and damp, like a tomb waiting to be sealed. I took another step, and another, and before I could stop myself, I was on board. The train was a labyrinth of dark hallways, the air thick with dust. The floors creaked beneath my feet, and I could hear faint whispers coming from the other cars. Shadows flickered in the windows, moving like they were alive. The sound of the wheels grinding against the tracks was deafening now, vibrating through my bones. I walked through the cars, each one colder than the last. The faint smell of smoke lingered in the air. In each compartment, the windows were fogged over. Figures sat inside, their faces hidden in the darkness. They didn't move, but I could feel their eyes on me, following my every step. I stopped in front of the last car, where Lamar stood, still smiling, still waiting. The door slid open as if it knew I was coming. And inside I saw them, the faces of the lost, the souls of those who'd broken the rules before me. They sat in the dark, their eyes hollow, their bodies twisted and worn, as if time had forgotten them. They didn't speak, but their presence was enough to tell me everything I needed to know. They had made their choice long ago, and now it was my turn. Lamar stepped forward, his grin widening into something monstrous. The train will leave soon. I hope you're ready, Edward. There's no turning back from here. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. The train jerked forward, and the world outside the windows blurred into a streak of darkness. The track ahead was endless. The ride, as I now understood, would never end. The rule was simple. Once you get on, you never get off. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed everything was Lamar's voice, low and insistent. Welcome to the schedule, Edward. We've been waiting for you. And just like that, the train sped into the night, into a place beyond time and escape. The last ride had begun. I woke up to the sunlight hitting my face, sharp and unsettling, like a hammer against the fog of my dreams. My head felt heavy, as if something was pressing down on it, but there was no sign of what I'd just been through. No train, no Lamar, no rules scrawled on crumbling paper. Just the soft hum of morning, which felt wrong. So wrong. It wasn't like any morning I had ever known. I sat up on the cot, blinking against the unexpected brightness. My eyes felt too dry, too tight, like they hadn't blinked in days. The air smelled fresh, like pine and rain, a far cry from the stale dust and cold iron of the museum. I was still in the Millridge Rail Museum, but everything had changed. The clock on the wall read 8:17 a.m. A strange time to wake up for someone who'd been stuck in a place where days blurred into one another like a fog. The sounds outside the office, birds chirping, the wind rustling, were so ordinary. Too ordinary. I wasn't sure how long I had been out, but something told me it had been too long. The first thing that struck me was the absence of the rules. I rushed over to the security office door, almost tripping over my own feet, and looked. The list of rules was gone. The wall was bare, freshly painted, as if no strange words had ever been there. A quiet panic bubbled up inside me, and I slammed my fist into the wall, as if that might make things clearer. But there was no answer. I stumbled back to the cot and sank into it. My body was aching, and my mind felt like it had been through some kind of horror I couldn't quite understand. I had no memory of how I got here, or where I had been before. Had I really been gone for days? Or was this a trick? I ran my hands through my hair, trying to remember. The museum, Lamar, the train, the whispers. It all felt like a nightmare I couldn't shake, but it was too vivid, too real. And then, I noticed it. On the desk, resting against the now empty list of rules, was a piece of paper, white and crisp, as if it had just been placed there. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. It was folded neatly, just like the old rules had been. Slowly, I opened it, and there, in my own handwriting, were the words. Rule number 0. Don't forget, you're part of the schedule now. I felt the blood drain from my face as the room spun. My heart began to race. The letter was short, simple, but it carried the weight of something far worse than anything I could comprehend. I was part of it. The schedule. The rules. I glanced at the clock again. 8:17 a.m. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The rules were supposed to stop. The train was supposed to stop. But instead, I was still here, trapped in a cycle, one that I couldn't escape. A feeling settled deep in my chest, a quiet, cold certainty. It never truly ends. The sounds of the museum creaked to life around me, echoing through the old building. The doors, once sealed, now stood wide open. The distant whistle of the train hummed in my mind like an echo from a forgotten past. I grabbed the letter and crumpled it in my fist, but something caught my eye as I moved to leave. A shadow, or was it just the light, shifted across the floor of the office. I froze, and in the silence, I heard it. The faintest whisper of a voice, like it was coming from behind the walls. Soft, but clear. It's time, Edward. I didn't need to look around to know who it was. I didn't need to see the pale face or the glowing eyes. I knew Lamar was close. Too close. And just like that, the world felt small again. It felt suffocating, like there was no way out. The rules had never been broken. They had only been waiting, hidden in the corners of my mind, waiting for me to remember them. I stood there, the letter in my hand, and I wondered, as the train's whistle echoed once more in the distance, if I had ever truly left the schedule behind.